All right, we're back from a nice little lunch break. Some nice sponsor videos that everybody saw there. I want to go ahead and thank all of those sponsors once again. We really appreciate the support, not only for TechMission but really for the industry as a whole. Before we get started with our afternoon panel here today, I'm going to bring the lovely Sarah Kerwin in to give some stuff away.
Hey everyone. All right, we're going to give away some quick WrenchWay t-shirts. So I'm just going to pick 3 random names from the list of attendees, and then I'll message you in a little bit directly to get your address. So we've got Jeff Berry and Kevin Miller and Todd Stokes. So congratulations, and I will message you shortly.
All right, some t-shirts there. Remember that by taking the challenges on the WrenchWay app, we're giving away a Sonic Tools kit if you take the Sonic Tools challenge on the WrenchWay app, and doing a drawing for a solo stove. So if you can, get out there on the WrenchWay app, complete those challenges. They're really simple, and you'll have a shot at some pretty cool stuff. So, all right, afternoon session. I am really excited about this one. We're going to be talking about onboarding technicians and maybe what we can do differently, what we know about onboarding technicians right now, and really how we can evolve in this really important topic of conversation here. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. I'll actually ask each of you to introduce yourselves, but Jill Gingrich, Seth Thorson, and Carolyn Coquillette, welcome to this afternoon's panel. We appreciate you being on, and let's go do a quick round of intros. Jill, would you mind starting us off?
I would love to. Thanks, Jay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jill Gingrich, and I'm the Vice President and Managing Director of a member network called WheelTime. We are in the heavy duty and medium duty commercial vehicle and equipment space. We are comprised of 150 locations across the US and Canada, and you may know us best as the Detroit Diesel Allison Transmission Distribution Network. Thank you for having us today.
All right, happy to have you, Jill. Always enthusiastic, always fun to talk to. Excited to have you. Seth, why don't you go ahead?
Seth Thorson, President of EuroTech Auto Repair. We have 3 locations, with a 4th coming online soon, doing European specialty in Minnesota. I also run a BMW tech support line called LMV Bavarian for about 300 technicians that we support on repairing BMW vehicles. All
right. And last but not least, my friend Carolyn. I was lucky enough to have dinner with Carolyn last week at down at Apex, and lucky enough to see her 2 weeks in a row now. So this is great.
Ditto. Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here and to be included as always in all the great things that WrenchWay is doing. Nice to meet everybody. Excited to talk about today's topic. I have been a technician, or I used to be a technician, to be honest. I wrenched from 2001 to around 2015, and still own my repair shop in San Francisco. And we specialize in hybrid and more so now electric cars. So I have been on sort of that side of the business. We're in San Francisco, which makes working as a technician and being able to afford the cost of living there really important. So I'll be representing the expensive metro area part of the conversation. I also have done some work with ASE, doing their ASE certifications for hybrids. So excited to be able to offer some of that. And then last but not least, I'm the founder and CEO of ShopWare Shop Management Software.
Just a few things going on, right, Carolyn?
Going on.
Yeah, just a few things. So one thing I want to point out is the beauty to me in TechMission as a whole is we're bringing together a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, and from the truck side, from the automotive side, from the fleet side, dealer side, independent. Really, these principles apply to whatever your shop is, right? And I think that's the important thing that, as we sit out here and we brainstorm ideas and share best practices, there's a lot of things that you can take back, whether you've got the smallest shop in the world or have the biggest corporation in the world. A lot of really, really good principles to take home. So as far as the onboarding topic goes, where do we go wrong? And I think this is kind of a loaded question, but maybe something where identifying the problem to start with can help us kind of lay out the onboarding process as a whole, and maybe identify gaps and where we can get better. So Seth, I'm going to start with you on this one, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Where do you see shops maybe miss the mark on this?
I mean, for me, onboarding starts at day one. I see a lot of shops miss the mark even on day one. I've talked in other meetings, and one of the things that we're big proponents on is communication before the employee starts. Day one, where do you park? It's as simple from day one as where do you park, because I've seen a lot of people come in the shops, and we were guilty of it for a long time. They come in, they park in the wrong spot. Your first interaction with that new hire is, hey, you got to go move your car. That sets a bad tone for the rest of the day, the rest of the onboarding, the rest of the process. So I think a lot of it starts even before they get there, with setting up your processes to make sure that they're ready when they get there, along with, some detailed instructions of what they're going to do their first day. The first day is the most nerve-wracking time an employee is starting with your company. So we're a big fan of scheduling that first day and making sure that it's a very smooth day one. Because if day one goes bad, we all know in this current environment, they may not show up for day two.
That's really true, and so important. I think you're right, is just being able to slow yourself down enough to where you understand that onboarding process is really, really key and vital. Carolyn, how about you? I mean, where do you see maybe shops not live up to maybe a technician's expectations when they're coming in to start off with a shop?
Thanks. So this is a conversation that we had in another WrenchWay podcast with some educators, and talking about how folks transition, especially younger techs that are coming straight out of school and joining a shop and really don't know what to expect and how to set them up for success. There are different things that people will need to know depending on how much experience they have in the space. Of course, no one knows how your unique shop operates. Even if you're going from, one location to another, there are idiosyncrasies. There's different facilities, for example, where you park your car, who you're going to work with, et cetera, et cetera. So taking the time to write down and what to expect, that's something that some shop owners have done a better job on with their customers. How will you find us when you pull in? This is what we're going to do, blah, blah. And it's probably more important that you do that for your technicians than if you do it for your customers. So this sort of segues into, how do you make time to work on your business instead of just in your business, and making the space to set down a standard operating procedure. And anything is better than nothing. So just making some time, maybe this weekend, to sit down and write it out, and then go from there. Once you have something on paper, you can start to iterate.
Yeah, that working on your business, not in your business, is so important. And I think for a lot of managers in our field, a lot of times they came with a technical background, so that might not come overly natural to them. So being able to take a step back, look at it as a whole, that is important, very important, obviously. Now, Jill, I think one of the other really cool parts about the panel that we've got here for this next hour is the fact that you all see multiple shops, right? And Jill, you're no different in that regard. You have a whole network of shops. What is your experience with the onboarding process with the shops, and do you think we do it justice?
I echo both Seth and Carolyn's comments. First of all, the process has to begin before they arrive on day one. There's a lot of various HR platforms allow for on the onset of kind of bringing somebody in. Secondly, the what to expect preparation. I think we need to consider the state of the location. Carolyn spoke of idiosyncrasies from location to location. What is the state of the location? when you're bringing in a newcomer, right? Is there chaos in the location? Is the culture alive and well? It's almost like inviting somebody into your home, right? You wouldn't do that if the family was arguing and things were tumultuous and terrible and you had angst and conflict and concern. And so I think as much as we focus on bringing in the newcomer, we got to make sure our house is in order. You know, and you really have to make sure that timing, I think the timing piece is a big part of that process, and being prepared to welcome them in and kind of lay out your plan and start your process on a solid foot.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think it really is something where I think most shop owners or managers or dealer principals, whoever it might be, know the importance of it and maybe just don't prioritize it, right? I think they know the importance of setting that first impression and how much that can have an impact on your shop culture, on the happiness of that individual. And when we don't do that properly or don't prioritize it, that it just seems to happen over and over and over again, right? And I think it's one of those things where, as somebody in a management position, you think in the back of your head, okay, I know this is important, but then you just really don't give it the priority that it probably deserves. So with that, I want to talk about maybe the benefits of having a good onboarding plan, right? And when I say that, what are some of the short-term impacts, some of the long-term impacts, and really, when we go to lay out an onboarding plan, what is our objective out of that? So Jill, I'm going to go right back to you. What is the importance of a good onboarding plan, and how does it impact maybe the lifetime of a technician with you?
Great question. Short term, certainly, if you set up for success, you will get that productivity, which is what the owners are anxious to have, right? The demand out there is so strong. And so our ability to supply it is top of mind. And that's, it's a pressing need that's kind of a visible, at a shop atmosphere, it's very visible, right? You've got backlog, you've got vehicles piling up in your lot. So you want to put that person into a productive role as soon as possible. And I think that can be achieved in the short term if you spend enough time on the front side doing the setup. Long term, that tech becomes part of your value add, your offering, your team. I think your retention, your hopes for retaining that employee are going to be realized. And I think you also earn the opportunity to recruit through your advocates, through your techs that are very pleased and loyal. We talk a lot about customer loyalty in our network and the link to profitability and how they promote other customers to your place of business. We got to be talking about employee loyalty and the link to profitability through satisfied employees. And so I think the long term becomes very, very rich and lasting. And that should be where we focus.
Yeah, I think it's often said that customer satisfaction is never greater than employee satisfaction, and onboarding is what sets the tone for all of your employee satisfaction. Carolyn, when you look at a long-term success, or maybe when you look at a shop that implements an onboarding process successfully, what does that do to the culture? What does that do to the shop as you grow, right? And so, I think when you look at it, you've got a really unique perspective because you've got both kind of the corporate side or the startup side on the ShopWare, and then you've got the shop side, and you probably see a little mixture of both, the good, the bad, the ugly in the onboarding process amongst shop networks, right?
I mean, Seth would be the person to really speak to sort of shop operational excellence, because I'm still, kind of in an adolescent stage, and he's got a more mature business than I do. But the experience recently for us, we have had sort of the same core group of people for some time. And for me, I'm no longer active in the business. We now have a new general manager who's running that shop. And what really happened was we had just lost a lot of the tribal knowledge that was sort of built into the existing folks who were there. And so that has compelled us to have to really like take what was between our ears and put it out in front of us and go, what do people really need to know? What are we assuming? What are we taking for granted? And so we've started to write down and basically what I did was I forced him, as he was the new guy, to basically write down everything that he needed to learn when he came in. And then we had another gentleman who's joined us, who's now being more of a foreman trainer role. He is also like writing down everything you need to know, from how to use, your shop management systems, where are the scan tools, where to find the bathroom, whatever the standards are inside of those businesses is what you should be writing down, and assume nothing, right? Assume that your staff member is going to walk in knowing absolutely nothing. The other thing that, Jill, you were basically talking about as far as having your house in order, your mise en place before that person walks in, is also having a standard operating procedure for letting your employees know when someone new is coming in. So not just, what to expect for the new person, but also what to expect for the folks that are already there. And I think we also take that for granted, right? As we finally found the tech, we're thrilled, they're going to start. And then we're like, oh shit, we didn't tell anybody that this person was starting today. So in our shop, what we like to do is always have a dry run before we even make an offer. We have someone come in and work and sort of shadow for a half a day or a whole day, ideally, so that they can get to know folks and they can sort of see how the shop runs, and we can kind of get a sense of kind of what they're about, which is super helpful in sort of knowing whether they're going to be a good fit both technically and culturally. But additionally, kind of letting everyone know well in advance who is joining, where they're going to have their toolbox, all that kind of stuff will also help people not be so surprised, obviously, when they first come in. One thing that we are now using at my shop is a software program called Guru, which is like a knowledge base platform for you to be able to keep track of all these things. So instead of just having it in a random binder or saved on your local disk drive or in Google Docs, Guru is actually structured for you to be able to then go in. It's like a wiki essentially for your business. So for folks who are looking for a platform that like techs could go and self-serve, and that's also an area where you can put like, hey, how do we address when we have this problem, or other things above and beyond just a new person starting.
I love that. And that moves us to my man, Seth here. And Seth, you just had an article in a magazine. Was it the Midwest Auto Care Association? Yep. And it was published. And it was so good. I mean, I don't want to inflate your ego too much here, but it was very, very good. And I still actually have it earmarked and sitting on my desk at home because I've read it a few times. And similar to everything that both Carolyn and Jill were saying, in that article, you walk through your process in a pretty great level of detail. And talking about the importance of it, talking about how you do it. And I just want to start with that piece right there, right? Is what was it that really drove you to want to start an onboarding program and to do it intentionally?
Yeah, so when we opened our second location, we didn't really have a great onboarding process, and we're hiring lots of new people. And then we're like, well, we're going to go to a third, fourth, and hopefully fifth location. And it became very apparent that we needed something much more rigorous and much more structured to be able to continually onboard people. And as Carolyn mentioned, the tribal knowledge, the knowledge of what we do and how the EuroTech way is. And that is so critical that, we really worked on, and I spent a weekend and I created I teach a 4 or 5 hour class on this, but we do a 2-hour manager training where we train our managers on onboarding, and we have full 30, 60, 90 days. So we just hired a new tech. My general manager puts the 30, 60, 90s on the calendar. I will get an update in 30 days on my desk. I will get the 30-day checklist. Sometimes I'll read it, sometimes I won't, but it comes on my desk so I know that everything's being followed through, that the process is happening. If I don't have a 30-day checklist on my desk, I'm going to Daniel, who's our district manager or COO of the company, and hey, where's my 30-day checklist on this employee? And then he'll go figure out what's holding the process up. But we have full 30, 60, 90-day goals. after we get our 30, 60, 90-day goals, then we go into our ongoing coaching process where we work with the employee to make sure that they're happy, we're getting everything on both sides of the fence, and we continuously work through that. As far as part of the onboarding process, we use Trainual, which is another app that we built. They give you a template and we build it out. So we have in Trainual, we have how to use our shop management system. We have how to use, our clock system, for porters, which porters are a major turnover for us, because we keep hiring these 20-year-old kids that end up now, one of them's a store manager in training, one of them's now a technician going to school that we're paying for his school. So our porters end up moving up, so we have to keep replenishing them. So we have down to how do you wash the floor? How do you clean the floor drains? How do you take out the garbage, down to how do you lift the garbage can without hurting your back? We have videos on it. We have processes on it. We have videos on how to wash a car without scratching it. What way do you use, how much dish soap do you use? A training video on this chemical to clean this thing, this chemical to clean this in the shop. We've really taken everything and systematized it. We probably have 8 to 12 hours of LMS-based learning for employees when they get onboarded. And that is broken down into their first 3 or 4 days. We don't make them watch 8 hours nonstop in a room like some corporations. We have, day 1, 7 to 8, attend this meeting. 12 to 2, you're going to do a Trainual. 2 o'clock for a technician, you're going to go on a ride with the shop foreman, learn the route, test drive route. We just hired a tech. He's been with us 3 weeks now. BMW team leader at a BMW dealer. He still has yet to touch a car. His 3rd week now, he's working on cars finally. We don't allow him to touch cars for the first 2 weeks because as busy as we are, and we have probably 60 hours of backlog, the problem we've identified is we can get that 60 hours done by just putting him on cars, and he comes out of the gate great, but then he slows down because all of a sudden we reel him back in and go, we haven't done this, 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 and this. So we find that in order to go fast, we have to go slow, and we really teach them how we do every single thing for the first 2 weeks. Then it's like, okay, now go, and by the time they're done with that, they're pushing at the gate because they want to get on cars, but we kind of hold them back.
I'm sure your managers aren't chomping at the bit for them to start working on cars at that point, are they?
The manager, yeah, we have some managers. We have one manager that he had that 60 hours of backlog. He's got the new tech, and he started running what we call his own EuroTech version, and had him working on a car the second day, and we got wind of it. And next thing you know, Daniel's over there going, hey, no, back, and we yank him back. And Simon Sinek, start with why, really go over and explain the manager, like the onboarding is very critical. You can't interrupt it. I know you're busy, but we have to do it right. And we really stick to that as a company. We've made it a focus.
That's a beautiful thing. And really, I think you hit on a bunch of really key points there that are, again, applicable to anybody. But that patience and knowing the process and trusting the process and holding people accountable to the process, right? I think once you come up with a process, and especially like onboarding, it's really easy for you to do the work up front when you're really motivated. And then once you start to get people into the shop, maybe that process can fall off, right? And I think, Jill, I don't know with your experience, do you see any shops in your network that are onboarding to that level, like what Seth was just talking about?
I do. I have a unique vantage point because I'm in a position to kind of garner best practices from across 12 ownership groups, and then those 152 different cultures and shop environments, if you will. And what I heard in what Seth was saying is that you have to streamline your process. You have to define it in a way that's easy to administer for your manager. We have to have our managers in mind as well, and easy to absorb as the newcomer coming in. It's not offloading stacks of policy documents and paperwork and things that aren't going to mean anything, right? And so you have to streamline. Our member in Kansas City, Central Power, they have a checklist, and it's basically the checklist for the manager, and it starts before day one. And then they have the first day. Nobody turns a wrench on day one, right? And there's personal kind of touch points throughout this checklist too. It's the little things that Seth said you have to be accountable for. It's inviting the new hire to lunch with the branch manager and some team members. We're trying to incorporate somebody into a culture. We're trying to learn something about a new person. We want to actually make time for asking them about their opinions of things that, their experiences and opinions on matters. Just because they haven't worked for you, doesn't mean they don't have some fresh, wonderful insights to provide. So it's a way to hold yourself accountable, but it's a way to also remind yourself that you have to go through the steps of the process. You can't skip forward as much as we want to. So I think the checklist is kind of one great thing that my member does in the Kansas City market. I have another member in Florida Detroit Diesel Allison, and I thought these were kind of cool takeaways. They said, make like a picture key of people with names and titles and contact information. Like you assume that people can absorb who's who in your zoo in a very short time. It takes us a long time to understand who does what's their title, what's their tenure, how are they going to influence my role? How do I connect with them? What do we do together to benefit our customers? And so I think little things like that can be references that also take the embarrassment out of a newcomer having to ask, who is that person, or not knowing a name, right? We all can agree that a name is important. We have to give them every chance to kind of know us through and through and be well connected. And so I think there's little tips and tricks that can kind of help facilitate that. And they seem maybe simple, overly simple, but it's just kind of taking the opportunity to care enough to set them up for that. It may appeal to some and it might not be necessary for others. But the thing is, it's not a one size fits all, and you have to have some flexibility and pivot points available in your process too.
I heard the picture key thing that you mentioned, and I think back to when I was on the dealership side, and I went in and was in a upper management level, and how hard it was to remember everybody's names that were now working for you. I think of that and I'm like, oh my goodness, that would have been such a game changer for me, just to be able to identify and comfortably say somebody's name. To me, with that large of a team, it took months to be able to go out and comfortably say, I know that that's Jimmy. Like, and
Right.
if you're not comfortable with that, it creates some kind of awkward tension,
Right.
which is not healthy in any of the onboarding stuff here. So, Carolyn, what is it that makes that first week so weird? I think we're all familiar with that when you go into a new place and you're in there the first week and everybody's kind of looking at you weird, and you're, oh, there's the new person. And it just feels like from the start of eternity, that's been an awkward time, that first week.
I appreciate what Seth had to say about taking the time to get someone on the cars, because of course, what everyone's wondering, especially, if you're talking about technicians, is how well does that person fix a car? Can they fix a car? They're probably thinking the same questions. I mean, I've always said when shops complain about some other shop screwing some job up, that you don't know what happened if you weren't in the bay next to that car. Like, it's at some point you don't know. It's not your place to say. Anyway, it's the same thing when you come into the business, right? You don't really know, how everybody's doing and vice versa. So having the time to let the technician get to know the rest of the staff before they actually have to go and perform on the cars will probably improve, and also give them a sense of like what is the style and what is the workflow of everybody else inside the business, specifically on the cars. I mean, I don't know, like fixing cars is hard enough. Having to get to know other people is just like a whole nother layer of complication. And, as we all know, our space is full of, very opinionated people, strong personalities. So it just takes time to get to know each other. having some icebreakers, shop lunch when there's like you said, Jill taking the technician out, especially to meet other members of the team, et cetera. Those are all really smart ideas. And any way you can kind of break the ice. We do a shop meeting every day, which I'm sure a lot of folks do. And so having something structured inside of that shop meeting to be able to let that person say hi or whatever, get to know everybody else is also really smart. So yeah, those would be my tips.
Do you, when you're bringing that person in to work, whether it's a half a day or a day ahead of time, I'm guessing that helps as kind of an icebreaker too, right? Just to have some familiarity with the crew that you're signing up to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's non-committal either, right? Like people are more themselves, I think, honestly, when they're evaluating. And that's part of the struggle, right? Which, yeah, we can kind of get away with more when the employee is new because they're going to be on their best behavior and they're want to please. But honestly, that's the one thing that you don't want to take for granted, right? You want to be able to, get them going when they have that positive attitude versus having to recover later when they're struggling. But yeah, getting that more honest view of what's going on in the shop and who that person is ahead of time is really great. I also think that I'm very much encouraging of all of my existing staff to be very frank. And it doesn't matter whether it's going to be a general manager or a service advisor or another technician or whatever, to say what they think of working at the shop. And so they get an opportunity to really ask each person and learn more about what the business is about before they're actually in there. And that's another really important, prerequisite to that person ultimately joining.
Yeah. And Seth, I want to revisit one of the points that you made earlier. And this is something that I think is so key for shops to take away from this. And that is, being able to have a process up front allows you to hold somebody accountable too, right? So you can't, I think old school management was, oh, I can't believe you did it that way. That's so stupid. And then the person on the other side's like, well, I'm just doing it the way I was taught, or maybe I wasn't even taught that. So have you seen that in your experience, that it helps that conversation of accountability and being able to have that maybe be a little bit more productive rather than just kind of yelling?
Yeah, we found that because we can hold them accountable to, corporate America loves SMART goals, and we use SMART goals with our company. And we really work with the employee after their 90 day to set their next SMART goals. And we go out and we go out and we go forward and we go forward. But yes, accountability can be held once they know what they're supposed to do. What you referred to, Jay, I like to call pigeon shit management. So the pigeon flies over and poops on everybody and then flies off. So that's what I like to call it. Somebody's gonna have to edit this now.
Accurate depiction.
Yeah. Somebody's gonna have to edit this now. But no, accountability is easier when they know what they're supposed to do, and it's set on their calendar. So Daniel, who works for me, is my COO. He's phenomenal integrator at putting things together. Like somebody's hired, their paperwork's done. Here's 30-day check-in. Here's 60-day. Here's 90. It's on my calendar. It's on the manager's calendar. I mean, everybody sees it. And so I don't have to say anything until it's past due. And then it's, hey, I know you've been really busy at the store. Daniel will go, hey, I know you've been really busy at the store. Where are we at on this 30-day? And they'll usually have some reason if they missed it, but they'll get on it pretty quick. And that's generally more effective than the other methods of getting results. And we get everything turned back in. I got a 30-day on an employee a month ago, and I read in, it was great updates of his strength, his weaknesses. He said, hey, I think you're lacking this, this, and this from my previous jobs. Oh, great. Well, let's see what we can do to better that. As somebody else mentioned, they bring other experience. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should get those pieces of equipment or, hey, he didn't know that the pieces he wants, we have something that actually works better. Let's make sure he knows that other piece of equipment will do what he wants to do.
So, Seth, let's dive into the onboarding plan itself. Where do you start at? And the reason I say that is it can be such an overwhelming piece. When we're hearing you talk about down to the detail of how you wash the floor, and maybe that shop that's out there that's like, we don't have any process for anything. Like, how do you tackle that? Where do you even start?
For me, it's a lot of delegation. Whoever is currently responsible for that task that's doing it to your standards or how you want it done, we ask them to write the process. and we give them a due date. Hey, hey, John, you're really good at this. Like, I'm amazed at how well you're doing this. Would you mind writing a process so that the rest of the company can do it how you do it? And they feel really good about themselves. And you tell them, hey, I'm looking for, can you have this done in like 60 days for me, a great process on this? And most of the time they say, sure. And you follow up with them. And sometimes they struggle to start writing the process. Like, great, well, what do you have? What can we help you with? And you coach them through it. But I'm not writing all the processes in my company. That would take forever, and I don't have that much time.
So how do you get consistency in process then? When I say that, even because that's something I've struggled with in the past, right? Is trying to get if you're trying to get consistently good processes out there, but maybe all the processes are written different or in a different format, do you kind of lay out a template of how they write it?
So ours are done in Trainual. So they will help write the outline, and then we will put it in a Trainual. And then sometimes even that employee will do the voiceover when we do the video work and editing work. So we put it down in the Trainual that goes across the company. Same thing like our OSHA safety training. I can reassign it every year to all the employees.
And that's amazing. I know we went through the process. This is probably 20 years ago, maybe not quite for me, but through the ISO 9000 process. And I think that reframes your thinking on how processes work and how detailed processes can be. And I think it makes the person writing the process maybe think through it a little bit more too. It's not, you kind of always thought you just did it this way. And maybe as you're going through the process, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm really missing a step, or maybe I'm taking an extra step, and being able to really look at that process. Now, Jill, I'll go to you here. Do you see, maybe as an extension to what I was talking about with Seth, any difficulties in writing process?
Indeed. I think that there are folks that are more well suited to do that kind of documentation of a step-by-step process. I think it needs to be an activity that involves both the manager and the person doing the process. For some kind of oversight of inclusion of details, level of detail, even the writing style, and kind of the sequence of events, if you will. I also think that some of our shops like to have kind of monthly pick a process that kind of impacts the operation, and have like a group think tank on how to improve the process. And that's when you open the process up to really the group, the team, and you allow for people to share ways to take waste out of the process. And it's during those sessions that we find some of the most innovative ideas. Sometimes you're too close to the process to be, non-partial to it. And so again, that's an opportunity that you kind of have to carve out in your day and kind of make time and space for your team to do it. But I think it's important. Templating the processes is also important. Encouraging and having accountability for managers having processes defined is really important. Not leaving it up to the employee alone, but certainly having that responsibility fall at the manager level for his team members.
What if you just suck at writing process, right? And I asked that kind of in a way. My business partner Mark, great at it. Yeah. Me, terrible. And so I think it's more getting me to sit down long enough to be able to think through and write it out. Any advice to those of us that really aren't good at it?
I go back to what Carolyn said early on, and that is just sit down and do it. Something is better than nothing, right? You have to start somewhere, and then be open and allow others to review and suggest modifications. I think if you look across your team, you've got people with different strengths. Certainly in some of our admin roles too, you have people that are very strong with written and verbal communication. You have to call on people to weigh in and to kind of help. And we aren't necessarily jacks of all trades, but the idea that you can't have one because you're not good at it, or you don't think there's time to carve out to define it, it's not acceptable, right? And so having something is better than nothing. I think starting at that point, there's so many resources I think available to kind of help, that you can just, you know, search on the internet to get a basis for how to write a process.
And at a fundamental level or a foundational level, I think a lot of it is caring, right?
Yeah.
And even caring how somebody sees their first day with you. And that's the next part of this that I want to talk about is let's take it from day one. When we look at a successful onboarding program, and I'm going to open this up to the floor, so whoever wants to take it can, but what does that look like on day one? You're bringing that new technician in or that new manager in, and you're trying to lay out the red carpet for them in terms of onboarding. Any best practices or I know, Seth, you'd mentioned, and basically I think that's consensus from the panel, is to have that communication going on even before that first day. But when they show up that first day, what is that? What impact does that onboarding plan have? I mean, when they come in, it doesn't maybe feel like you're all rattled, right? You're kind of laying out the red carpet and you're truly treating them well. I'll open this up to the floor. When we look at that first day, what should we be doing to engage that technician and trying to get them comfortable with who you are as a shop?
I guess I mean for us it's our day 1, day 2, day 3 schedule. It's some time with our trainual. It's some time with the manager helping them do paperwork. It's then some time with the shop foreman on test drives. It's then some time shadowing our training tech. And then it's some time with a team lunch, but their time is there's every day, everything's scheduled the first couple of days, and we're handing them those schedules and the team is aware of it before, but I think it starts about a week before they start. So we start telling our team who's coming, when they're coming. The minute they walk in, we use Slack. We send a group Slack out. Hey, welcome so-and-so to the team. And I would say within 10 minutes, across all 3 of my stores, even if that person's not at one of those stores, they're getting messages bombarded. Hey, welcome, 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 welcome. You know, and it gets bombarded by 20 some employees across 3 stores that might not meet this person till a company outing or event. But for us, it starts before they walk in the door.
How do you control that, Seth, from the standpoint of, I think we all know Monday mornings in a shop are pretty busy, right? And typically a technician is, most likely going to start on a Monday. There's obviously times where they don't, but if they're starting on a Monday, the phones are going crazy. You're trying to run around and make sure that all the fires are put out. I've seen it from personal experience where it's, that person comes in and they're like, hey, the manager will say, just go grab a seat over there. I'll get to you in like a half an hour. How do you control that? The manager should be informing his team that somebody is starting Monday. Just like if I was on vacation, I am just not available for the first 2 hours of the day. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to handle. I mean, if you're on vacation, you're not available, right? So just treat it like on vacation. That manager is not available the first 2 or 3 hours. He has a very important task to do. And that can be a little bit tougher when you're visual, right? So if a customer comes in and they're like, hey, there's Seth. I want to talk with Seth. And, it's trying to professionally break away from that customer or hand them off, I'm assuming, or how do you not get cornered, or do you not even show up visibly in the front? You kind of have.
There's a back office where we do a lot of that. So, but then there's a handoff so the manager can look at the shop, do his walk around, get control of the shop, because there's a handoff from the manager to say, hey, you're an LMS for 2 hours. Now that store manager can go up front, answer any question concerns, help his other staff, get that going. Then there's maybe another meeting. Then there's maybe, hey, now you're going to go take a test drive with the foreman because we have 2 defined test drive routes. We have a short and a long. Because God forbid a tech doesn't come back. I know there's two different test drive routes they can be on. So the car's going to be on the side of the road in one of those 2 spots, right? So, I mean, they learn that type of thing.
The attention to detail right there is so key, right? You just talked about defining two different routes. And even when you're putting that in your Trainual or whatever application you're using in your own in your own individual shop, excuse me, down to that level of detail can help a tech feel comfortable, right? Especially if they're not familiar with the area that they're in. Having that, Carolyn, I'm guessing in San Francisco, it's probably not the easiest place in the world to take test drives.
Well, you have to decide. I mean, you have to have a plan. You can't just drive out of the shop and go find a pothole to go test some suspension on.
You mean you can walk faster and you can drive in San
in
Francisco?
some areas. I could tell more stories about it. I mean, so a couple of things came to mind while we were describing that, Seth. I mean, first, to sort of rewind to our previous question about, what's like, how do you handle folks who may not? How do you handle starting the process when you don't have an existing onboarding SOP, whatever, in your business? And this again came up with the ASE panel, which is every single new employee needs to have a buddy. Presumably, if they're a younger tech, they need to have a mentor. But even if they're a journey master tech, they should have somebody in the business that they're partnered with, that's their go-to person for whatever comes up. And if you're a shop who has no technicians, then obviously you don't have anybody. Maybe it's you. And if you've never wrenched on a car and you're hiring your very first technician, then that person's the expert on themselves onboarding. But for everybody else, which is pretty much the lion's share of what we're talking about here, you either were a tech before or you have existing techs in your business. And whoever that person is getting buddied up with, that's the person that you go to before the new person is hired, and you sit down with that buddy and you say, okay, what do we need to make sure that this person knows? And let's write all of those things down. And then that becomes your, first draft for your onboarding process. So just go to whoever's going to be that designate, whether you're hiring a person now or you're going to hire somebody someday. Find that person who'd be that right buddy inside of your shop and just start talking to them about it. And then the two of you can collaborate. And then, as Jill mentioned, when you already had that conversation, you've had that buy-in with your team, then when that new person doesn't know something, it's not like, oh, well, you're an idiot. How did you not know that? They're thinking, I didn't write that down. I didn't train them on that. That's interesting. That's something that I need to add to the process. So the actual not knowing becomes informative and iterative to improving. In terms of, I can't remember where we were in terms of like first day stuff, test drives. I mean, Seth, you're really setting the bar as far as all the different processes that people need to follow. And like, in our example, for like a test drive example, we would just have people, shadow each other for a period of time. And I think whether you're a master or you're a newbie, that buddy system and that mentorship process is going to be consuming a lot of the initial time of the business, whether it's a manager who's spending some time out of pocket, or it's a technician that's spending time out of pocket. You just have to schedule it. You just have to have the discipline. All of us have time management challenges, right? I mean, all of our lives are busy. And as we all know, if you make the space for it, it'll actually get done. So you just have to make the commitment ahead of time that you're going to make the space. We used to, one of my technicians, when he would do like larger projects, he would actually come to work not wearing his uniform. So he looked more like a customer and less like a technician. And then he could sort of walk around the business without people bothering him. So maybe Seth is wearing his Groucho Marx mask or something when he's there for day one. But either way, however you do it, figure out a way to turn off the distractions and really focus on that person.
I love that. Jill, is there anything you'd want to add to that? I mean, there just a load of great information here.
Yeah, what I heard both Carolyn and Seth say is a lot of care, thought, details, planning goes into it. If they're going to be part of the team, them seeing how busy, your shop is, how customers are an integral part to your environment, it's natural to want to maybe like, categorize, well, this can't happen now, but including them in the reality of the day, I think makes them feel special and a part of the team sooner. They're going to see it all. And you might as well kind of, embrace their ability to see it through your eyes and to have you model behavior, whether it be with fellow employees or with your customers. The mentor or buddy idea that Carolyn spoke of is so necessary. You know, it's an opportunity to pair that experienced person, well-rounded tribal knowledge, but also experienced cultural advocate for your company with this newcomer. And if you don't know how to kind of create that kind of a program in your company, at least in our space, the heavy duty space, the Technology and Maintenance Council, which is a division of the American Trucking Association, they have study groups that work on all of these kinds of topics. And there is one recommended practice out there that exists for a mentoring program. And just as Jay said early on, the kinds of practices that we all care about are practices that can be applied to big corporate style shops or smaller independent shops, right? It's got to be scalable across your location. And so I would just challenge people to be mindful that if it's something that's on your mind in terms of bettering your operation and bettering the way you welcome people, look around and see what's available to you to steal shamelessly, to model and utilize. It's forums like this that Jay and Mark put together that allow us cross industries to have these conversations. This is a wild start to a great conversation, right? And I picked up some things from Carolyn and Seth in the short time we've been together. So I would just say it doesn't all have to be created on your own. There are lots of resources available. I would just challenge you to look around for them and ask those that you meet through great events like this.
Yeah, be intentional about it. So we've got about 8 minutes before the top of the hour. We'll take some Q&A right at the end of our segment here. What I'd like to leave people with is are maybe some take homes, right? What are some things or some advice that you would give to that human resources manager or that shop manager or fixed ops director about an onboarding process? I would be really interested to hear maybe a couple key points that you might suggest to our audience. And I guess Carolyn, I'll maybe pick on you first, if you don't mind.
Not at all. So make friends. Obviously, participating in events like this is tremendous. I recommend joining an industry association. If you're looking to get a coach, get a coach. These are all people who can not only connect you with resources, but also help you hold yourself accountable to make the time and just, have a commitment to personal improvement. And the second thing I would say is, you can do it. We all figured out how to get as far as we've already come with ourselves, investing in ourselves and, figuring out how to fix cars. I preach often that we're a industry of autodidacts, which is that we've all taught ourselves how to fix cars, fix trucks, whatever. There's a certain amount of problem solving that comes with the work that we do. And so even when it's scary, when that car rolls in that you've never seen before, you figure it out. And it's just the same with your business. So keep on pushing. It's going to be great. We're going to all improve our shops and continue to develop that next generation of techs.
I love that. Jill, I'll go to you next.
Gosh, that was a strong end, wasn't it?
That was.
I love the positivity. I do, and the outlook. I would say, look around your team, and your research is right inside your walls. Sit down, ask questions. What does a newcomer need to know? What did you wish you knew? You have to be open and let your guard down, because you're going to be criticized for what you haven't done, don't do, should do. That's parenting, that's management, that's everything, right? We're not perfect people. So ask your people, then take that research, go sit down quietly, find a buddy like Mark, right? Better writer, Jay?
Yes, 100%.
And have somebody help you organize that checklist. I honestly think a simple start would be create your checklist. What do you need to do to bring somebody into your company? I mean, it'll go from your systems access to your passwords to where they park, you know, their training, their LMS, technical training, all of those things. Just do the research and try to get it into a document. I promise you the elephant seems bigger than it is. I really do. You know, it's possible. We can do it. And you know what? It won't be perfect on the first shot, but you'll continue to improve it. And as long as you're open to that, everything's available for the taking.
That's great. That's great. And Seth, any words of wisdom for everybody out there?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have this years ago. So if I can do it, pretty much anybody can. I am not great at writing processes. I had a lot of good people around me that helped, and, you know, start with a manageable chunk and add to it, build your dream board out of what you want in your onboarding process, and then pick off 1 or 2 projects at a time, knock those out, and just keep knocking down your projects. But, you know, the 30, 60, 90 is probably the biggest thing to get people on board, and really break down what you want in the first 30, what you want in the first 60, and what you want in the first 90. Then you can start breaking down your checklist. So take it big and start breaking it down in smaller chunks, and you'll have a program before you know it.
Well, and I think, Seth, one thing that you did a really good job at was, and Carolyn, you had alluded to this as well, is picking a tool that can be the foundation to all of it, right? There's so many good tools out there right now that you can use and that can help you out, not only in onboarding, but really your processes in general. And I think, you know, as we're going through this discussion, it was going through my head that a lot of this is applicable to any process in your business, and being able to be intentional about your processes. As Carolyn put it, working on your business, not in your business, as much as possible. And I think everything that the three of you shared today is incredibly valuable to any of our audience, right? I think this applies to anybody. And even if you're that technician that's out there listening right now, being able to take some of this back to your shop and being able to try and implement things all the way down to, you know, how do you take care of a special tool? You know, that there's things that you can do that will make it easier on the lives of everybody. So thank you to the three of you. If you don't mind holding on here for a little bit, I think we're going to take some Q&A and see if there's anybody that might have some questions out there. And there's an anonymous attendee that wrote, "How do you manage mistakes from new technicians, especially entry level?"
I can cover a little what we've done, because we always have an apprentice in our business, especially entry-level people. Our thing is we write a chart for our apprentices. And so, you know, before they can be signed off to do an oil change without a mentor, they have to have done, you know, 6 successful oil changes in a row without somebody catching a mistake. And the clock resets to 0 the minute we catch something. So they do it, we check it, they miss something, their clock's at 0. And once they've done 6 in a row, they're certified to do oil changes and inspections by themselves. Then we go to something like tires, and then we go to something like brakes. But you let them go willy-nilly in the shop, and you're gonna have things broken and damaged and problems and frustrations on your part and the employee's part, and then you're gonna blame them when the end result was you didn't train or lead them in the proper way. So we're very keen on how we do it, but we certify them in different things as we go. Then it may be how to use a BMW scan. You know, we have a whole breakdown of, we check them off and certify them on things once they've done them, the competence level. It doesn't mean they're still going to be perfect, but we want a certain competence level before we let them do it alone. Would be the best answer.
I love that. I love that approach. Jill or Carolyn, care to add anything to that?
I was just going to say that if the technician makes a mistake, your first question is, what did we not do to allow that to happen? Which is kind of why Seth, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So the reason why you have all these processes is because without them, there were problems that took place. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just an opportunity to reflect in the mirror. And so that's where it's like, you know, let's do a process. Okay, how can I help you? And then if you continue to have these issues, then why aren't you following the process? And then if the person refuses to follow processes, then maybe they're not the right person, but that at least gets you a logical path to have them kind of be able to improve themselves.
Jill, how about you? What have you seen?
Well, just completely on board with the experts on this call, which Carolyn and Seth in this space. But I I love what Carolyn said on the necessity is the mother of invention. I think being able to, again, look in the mirror at ourselves and understand where we went wrong in the process takes that pressure and that heat off of that new person from feeling like they've, completely screwed it up, jeopardized their job. It's not they're not easy shoes to be in.
I've got a question for, let's go with Seth, and this'll, I don't think we've got any other questions in the Q&A. If you do have a question, this is kind of last call for that. Of course, you can email us and we'll get it out to the three of these folks. Do you still find holes in your process, Seth, when, like, say you're going through it and you think you've got everything covered and then all of a sudden there's something that unforeseen comes up, or maybe the first time it's happened and you have to tweak your process?
Yeah, we find holes all the time. I mean, nothing is perfect. Sometimes it's a one-off situation, and I always caution people, you have to be cautious not to write a process for the one-time situation, or you'll end up with process upon process upon process upon process and nothing gets done. So you have to determine whether it's a real ongoing issue or if it's the one-time exception that there's things you can't cover, and that's when you hope that you have some knowledge and brain power in your team that can overcome that. But there's holes in everything. Sometimes you can get too process ridden. I have a lot, but there's times we go, that's a one-off isolated thing. Let's make a note of it. Now, if times change, COVID changed some things, and all of a sudden that becomes 10, 12, 13, 14 times this happened, then we do have to address it with a process.
That's interesting. And all of this is really powerful to me, right? And when I say that, we've all been on the employee side of this, and we've probably all been on the employee side when the onboarding process hasn't been great. And how little you feel when you come in to a place of business that doesn't have a good onboarding process it doesn't feel good, right? And I think it makes that first week so much more stressful. And if you're starting off on a bad note, we talked about it in the last session that Kristen was moderating, with 41% of technicians leaving the industry within the first few years that they're in a shop. When that young student comes out and they're not confident yet, and that you put them into an environment that doesn't have a lot of structure, and then are frustrated when they fail. Carolyn, I think you said it best, when we've got to look at ourselves in the mirror here a little bit and just kind of do some self-reflection and understand that it's not all on that person. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's probably on us, and we've got to do a better job at getting them on here. So I think this has been an incredible panel. I thank the three of you so much for being on here. And hopefully everybody takes some of this advice home. It was a lot to chew on. There was a lot of really, really good input from the three of you. So thank you so much. And we truly, truly appreciate everything that you guys are doing for the industry.
Ditto, Jay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.